Hello, welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation. I'm Owen James and this is your Rangers news update. The question on everyone's lips, who is going to be the next Rangers manager? The second question on everyone's lips is what the hell is going on? And the third question is, there's a game on Saturday, who the hell's picking the team? I don't know, maybe it's the tea lady, maybe Kevin Thelwell's nan, I don't know. Someone has to pick the team. Maybe Kevin Thelwell picks the team, maybe Patrick Stewart picks the team. I don't know. Maybe we have a vote. Maybe we put up a poll on YouTube on the club YouTube page, and we have a big vote as to who play. I don't know. Can't do any worse than Russell Martin, though, could we? I mean, maybe we have a lottery, and I don't know. Steve from Saltcoats gets to pick. I don't know what's happening with that one, but you've got to say only Rangers could have 2 weeks away from domestic football and still manage to fuck it up. You know what? Whenever I hear the reports on the next Rangers manager, and I hear the next Rangers manager appointment been discussed anywhere, whether it be on Sky, whether it be on TalkSport or whatever, you know what? I can't help but feel that behind any discussion, that behind any discussion for the next Rangers manager's job, that we should be having the Benny Hill music and the circus music, because it is a right fucking clown show at this moment in time. Look, in terms of the odds and where we're up to with the odds, Danny Rule is still out there. We'll talk a little bit about him. But the present favourite, the odds-on favourite with many bookmakers, is now Australian manager Kevin Muscat, who formerly, obviously, was on the verge of getting the job before being pipped at the post, so as to speak, by the Belgian thoroughbred Mr. Philippe Clement, although he turned out to be a Belgian donkey. That's obviously the favourite. The second favourite is still Danny Rule. But unfortunately, there is a second person joined Danny Rule as second favourite, guys. And it's someone who, when I read this name this morning, and I was not... Look, I'll be honest with you. Things are not great at the moment. I've been finding things a bit hard at the moment. My job is really getting to me. I can't stand my job at the moment. I really can't. I hate my job. Really do hate it. But... it's really getting to me and getting me down at the moment. But, the name that was mentioned this morning, that I saw being mentioned this morning as linked with this job, was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And I've got to say, that made me practically suicidal. It really did. I mean, honestly, you've got to be having a laugh. I mean, you genuinely have got to be having a laugh. This is a man who failed at Cardiff City appallingly badly. Yes, he did a decent job at Molde in Norway. He failed at Manchester United. Ollie's at the wheel. Well, the wheel came off, and the wheels all came off, and the steering wheel came off, and it crashed. He was also at Besiktas as well for a short period before being sacked there as well. He's not got the best track record, and I pray, please God, do not let it be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I think if it's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, that come the end of the season, we'll be looking for yet another new manager, and we will have failed abysmally yet again. Really will have done. Now, obviously, the one appointment that kind of has split fans a little bit is the discussion over Danny Rule. Now, it's also apparently splitting the board as well. Apparently, the board, and yes, unfortunately, Tweedledum and Tweedledummerer do have a say in this and are playing a part in this, which does slightly concern me. It really is like, I don't know, letting Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell loose with appointing a new manager is like letting Rolf Harris and Gary Glitter look after your kids. It's not a great idea, is it? It really isn't. I mean, honestly, I do despair with these two. I mean, those of you who've ever seen the film Dumb and Dumberer, I'm going to say that the two characters in Dumb and Dumberer would give me greater faith in running a football club than Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell. Kevin Thelwell, a man who is very, very badly thought of in football circles, and a manager and a CEO who is genuinely incompetent. But Danny Rule apparently is dividing the hierarchy, with some being all for the young German head coach, others been against this appointment, seeing it as a Martin type appointment and the worry that it could go the same way. Now, Danny Rule, I don't think is the same person as Russell Martin. Let's get this honestly straight now. Danny Rule has worked for some good coaches in Hansi Flick, for example, the Barcelona coach, who has been exceptionally successful over there. He did a very good job, as assistant at Southampton, assistants with the German national team. He's also worked at Bayern Munich. People talk about, obviously, Russell Martin had a track record and a CV of failure, and pretty much worked with. And I think, one of the things you've got to kind of get across is the next Rangers manager or head coach, or whatever you want to term him as. It's semantics. I think you need to have someone who understands big club mentality. And, if Danny Röhl was to be the man, at least Danny has worked at Bayern Munich, and Bayern are one of the biggest clubs in world football. Sheffield Wednesday fans talk very well of this man, that, despite the chaos and the basket case and the nut job of a club that he was asked to work at, and I think those of you who go, oh, well, he only finished 12th with Sheffield Wednesday, or he failed with Sheffield Wednesday. Let's get something in perspective here. That club makes our club look like the greatest run club in the world. It makes our club. It makes Patrick Stewart and Kevin Thelwell, and Kevin Thelwell's nan, and Kevin Thelwell's uncle, and Kevin Thelwell's brother-in-law, sister's budgerigar look like they know they're doing the best job in the world ever compared to Sheffield Wednesday. So I think, admiration to him for that. Now, the name that is currently doing the rounds and seems to be the favourite, obviously, is Kevin Muscat, the Australian, who was nearly appointed. Now, for me, there are two worries over Kevin Muscat. One is, would he fit into the structure, the so-called structure that we have? I think the structure that we have needs to be relaxed a little bit. I think, if we're going to attract a top line manager stroke head coach, you need to make sure that manager stroke head coach has a prominent say in the team and what happens with the team. I find it a bit silly that allegedly, and it's only allegedly, I don't know how the club is run per se. I'm sure, someone at one of the incasts will be only too willing to tell me that I'm wrong. We all know how they love to be right, and how they have a dream to always be right. But there we go. Anyway, look, I think the manager does need more say. Needs more say, and that's one worry, that Muscat will see it, look at it, and go, well, you're not going to give me a lot of power over this. I don't want the job for that reason. And that to me is why probably Gerrard turned the job down. Muscat is his favourite. Like I said, he is a manager who I believe, would follow a fast, aggressive, attacking style of football, which is a lot of what the fans want to see. He's a guy who plays Ange ball. I mean, he is a disciple of Ange. In the NFL, they talk about a coaching tree. They talk about coaches coming off that coaching tree. It's that they have a coach at the top, a head coach at the top, and then from him, other great head coaches develop. Kyle Shanahan has had the likes of D'Amico Ryans. Sean McVay has had the like of Nick Sirianni, for example. Shane Steichen, another one. These guys that have come off this coaching tree. So look, there's a development there. So Dan Campbell's got obviously a coaching tree now as well with Aaron Glenn, which is not going particularly well, but obviously Ben Johnson, who's doing a lot better at the Bears. But look, there is this, and I think Kevin Muscat is someone who's come from that Postecoglou coaching tree. Ange was successful in Australia, successful in China, exceptionally successful in Scotland, as much as it pains me to say it. Yes, he hasn't done particularly well in England, and he's struggling at the moment, but again, I think he's at a basket case of a football club. Just because it's not going, I'm not going to criticise Marinakis. I'm too frightened to do that. But look, at the end of the day, I think Muscat would bring a high aggressive press. He'd bring an aggressive way of playing, and I think the style of football that he plays would suit Rangers, would suit the domestic game, and he'd do very well in Scotland, which is what at the end of the day we want to do. How he does in Europe, I think, would be another question. People have always said in the past, well, Ange never did anything in Europe. Well, he won the Europa League last season, so hey, perhaps the style does work in Europe. Yes, he has that worry, that St. Troyden failure. Of course he does, but I think, as a manager, you learn from those failures, and I'm sure he has learned from those failures. Now, one of the key questions is, obviously, who's going to pick the team? And obviously, if Muscat comes in, the other concern for me is this: we're going to have to wait to December for him to get the job. Now, if that's the case, apparently, according to report, he would have Neil McCann take the team until he arrived in December. Now, it was thought that actually when he was going to be appointed 3 years ago, that McCann was going to be part of his coaching staff anyway. He was going to be involved. Something I know that Rangers fans will love, the fact that this former Rangers man would be involved with the coaching staff. Now, Neil is a very good coach, don't get me wrong. He's done a very good job under Barry Ferguson. He knows how to handle the players know him. He knows how to handle Nico Raskan, which is a great way. He's talked well about that. And McCann is a very impressive individual when it comes to talking about the game and talking about how the game should be played. And I think if you listen to Neil McCann on Sky, on a lot of these things, you see that McCann can see a lot of the time what is going wrong at Rangers. And he knows in a way what to do to put it right. And I think that would help. I suppose it would create an interesting paradox that if McCann comes in, takes the team to December, we go on a massive unbeaten run, win a League Cup, for example, whenever that final is. I'm not sure it's before Christmas or not. But would people go, well, let's just give it to Neil McCann, forget Kevin Muscat? I suppose that could be an interesting point for the time. In terms of Kevin Muscat, his managerial career, he started out as an assistant manager at Melbourne Victory, then as a manager at Melbourne Victory, obviously working under Ange Postecoglou. He was the assistant manager for Australia. Yes, he had that failure in Belgium with St Truiden, which is the one that anti-Muscat people will always bring out. But as I've said on a number of occasions, one, we kind of have to shop within the market that we are shopping in because of where we are as a club and the finances we have. We would all love to shop in Waitrose or Fortnum & Masons or Harrods, but unfortunately, I think Rangers are very much a club that is shopping at Lidl and Aldi at this moment in time. Nothing against Lidl and Aldi, but obviously they are the lowest form of supermarket in the UK. No disrespect. But there we go. He then was obviously manager at Yokohama Marinos, then before becoming the manager where he is currently at Shanghai Port. Now it's thought that he wants to finish the season there, win his second Chinese Super League title, and then move on. That would be December when their season finishes. In that time as a manager, he has had a very successful spell in terms of what he has achieved, what he has won as the manager. He's won Chinese Super Leagues, he's won the Australian A-League, he's won the A-League Cup, he's won the Chinese Super League. Yes, okay, not major tournaments in themselves, but it's more about the winning mentality. This is a guy who has a winning mentality. This is a guy who knows how to win. And one thing I will say about Russell Martin, about Michael Beale, they didn't know how to win. They weren't winning mentality guys. Yes, Clement had that, but that's a debate for another day. I think there's a whole story behind the Clement failure and the Clement debacle at Rangers that goes way beyond just Philippe Clement. I believe that the ownership and the way that the owners, the Parks, conducted that, and I think he's another manager in the long line of managers that Douglas Park and his disgusting son have destroyed. But we'll talk about that another time. But in terms of this manager here, he's a manager who knows how to win. Now I know you all have a good stat out there, so let's go through his stats. He started out at Melbourne Victory, as you know, 214 games, 105 victories, 45 draws, 64 losses, 49% win percentage, and of course those titles. Yes, St Truiden, he failed, and that is the worry, the one concern. But he then went to Yokohama, where he was 116 games there, 67 wins, 19 draws, 30 defeats, and 57.76 win percentage. Better than Martin, better than Barry Ferguson. Barry's not coming back, guys. Get over it. I must say, I was reminded of Barry Ferguson last night. I was watching Mike Bassett, England manager, and it did remind me a little bit of Barry. Shanghai Port now, presently, 75 games in charge, 49 wins, 11 draws, 15 defeats, only 15 defeats in the 2 seasons, 65% win percentage. Career-wise, a 53.21 win percentage. Guys, we're not going to get someone with a 70, 80, 90% win percentage. They don't exist anymore. I know some people will go, well, 57% is not very good, is it, as terms of a win percentage? Let me just give you a few heads up on that one, shall I? There's a manager currently in management at this moment in time in terms of his win percentage. He currently sits at 59.82%. Someone who believe that if their win percentage is not 65, 70 plus, shouldn't be Rangers managers. Yes, that is Mr. Carlo Ancelotti as a manager. Carlo Ancelotti, according to some Rangers fans, if we're going on win percentage, would not be fit to manage Rangers. Let's have a little look at someone else, shall we? A manager with 54.44% win percentage, apparently, according to some, would not be fit to manage Rangers. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jurgen Klopp. Certainly someone who I would take every single day as our manager. Let me give you another statistic, shall we? A man who is widely regarded as one of the greatest managers in football history at present. in terms of his managerial career. Yeah, this guy does have an amazing win percentage, 71.5%. That's Pep Guardiola, but he has managed Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and Manchester City. Certainly not obviously in as tougher leagues as the other two. So that one is one that kind of goes against the grain a little bit. But look. Let's look at this as well. Let me give you one more final statistic on this one, shall we? Here's a manager who has won multiple Premier League titles, has won the Champions League, has won the Spanish League. Jose Mourinho has a 61% win percentage. So, by the argument of some, those guys will be not good enough to be the manager of Rangers. So let's get away from this high win percentage thing. But on the whole, his trend in terms of his winning is pretty decent. His current team in their 26 games this season have scored 63 goals. They average 2.4 goals per game. Rangers average less than a goal a game in domestic football at present, having played 7 games, scoring only 6 goals and conceding 7. Yes, it has been that dire and that boring. Kevin Muscat is an outstanding candidate, I believe. Yes, look, being honest, none of the candidates particularly are candidates that you would get excited about. It's not... It's one of those situations. I watch a bit of comedy, guys. I watched this guy called Jeff Dunham. I don't know if you've heard of him. Jeff Dunham is a ventriloquist, and he's got this character called Walter, who is an old man. And I think the example he used when he talked about the American presidential candidates is very much apt to this. It's like you're sat at a bar. It's 2 a.m. in the morning, and it's time to go home, and you're looking for someone to go home with. And you look down the bar, and you go, "Is that it? Is that all I've got to choose from?" And I think that's kind of how we're feeling as Rangers fans. A little bit of like, yeah, there's definitely no 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10 there. There's a couple of 5s and a couple of 6s, but and a couple of 2s, but nothing else. Perhaps you have to settle for a 6 at this point. Sorry, that's a bit misogynist. I do apologise to any female watchers of the channel. But yeah, we go. Look, I mean, Muscat to me, yes, is the one candidate who stands out. And yes, I would have loved it to be Gerrard. Before anyone comes and calls me a hypocrite, yes, Gerrard will still have been my choice, but he's not coming. You've got to get over that and move on. Look at what we've got now. And to me, Muscat is the outstanding candidate. Guys, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. Let's get this settled. I'm bored of talking about it. Catch you on the next one.